Ready? All right, we would like to welcome number 4 ranked player in the world, Collin Morikawa, here into the Genesis Invitational Media Center. Collin, you had a chance to play some holes today. Can you talk a little bit about the course?
Yeah, it's unfortunately I couldn't play a couple weeks ago, so it's good to see. I watched obviously a little bit of the Farmers and saw how firm and fast everything was, and just assumed the rough was going to be growing out. They definitely did that this week, and with the forecast, the weather, the rain, it's going to play really tough. It's going to play long. It's going to play, where fairways matter a lot. I don't think you can really overpower a golf course this long when the rough is that big. So fairways are going to be important. This Torrey Pines is already a very, very difficult golf course, so I look forward to that and just have a challenge in front of us.
And Collin, obviously we're here in San Diego for unfortunate reasons due to the devastations up in Los Angeles. You being a California native, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to give back through the West Coast Swing?
Yeah, starting at Pebble, decided to donate $1,000 per birdie and $2,000 per eagle between Pebble Beach and this week to the California Community Foundation and the LA Fire Department Foundation. I know this week the tournament, I believe, is partnering with California Rises. So there's a lot of foundations out there, a lot of communities that are in need, a lot of people and families that are in need, and just to kind of do a little bit of support and just create awareness. We've seen this too often. I think even with, the most recent one for me that hit home was the Lahaina fires. Fires happen, people kind of forget, and then you move on to the next cycle. And I realize that's how news and media works, but for how big of an impact Los Angeles has gone through with everything on the fires, you just have to keep creating awareness as much as you can. So it's amazing to help out my little bit, and hopefully we make a lot of birdies starting Thursday.
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone. Dan, right behind you.
You and JJ like to go back and forth a lot. If they allowed rangefinders, which they're testing, would you use it? Do you think it would help anything? So, like PGA Championship allows it, and I normally use it, and I just shoot the number just to like quicken things up. JJ's gonna hit this, but he's like not a slower caddy, but he likes to take his time sometimes. So that's part of the whole speed thing, right? But I mean, I would use it. It wouldn't really add more time because I would do it first thing. That would be out of it. And then as he's walking things off, it would be like as if he would normally walk it off in any other tournament that we can't use it. Do you feel like that's like a good move to try to speed things up? It helps more from a fact of when you're out of position, like not really in the fairways. I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't think it's the end solution to changing, our pace of play from, if you had 5 hours and 20 minutes to 4.5 hours, right? It's not going to shave 45 minutes off our time for pace of play. But I know a lot of people complained when the tour was here a few weeks ago how slow it was. But when you have a course in front of you that is that difficult, and the winds are up and the conditions are that tough, it's just going to play slower. Like there's no way around it. I get it. Guys are slower than others, and sometimes it takes too long, but tough conditions make it play slower no matter what. Like it's going to happen that way.
Go over here.
Collin, while we're on the topic of that, Lucas Glover about a week ago said he thought aim point should be banned. That's a practice you've used. How do you feel about that? And also, statistically, have you seen any improvement in your putting in using that? Because he mentioned stats being definitive and claiming that it's not helpful.
Yeah, I have nothing against Lucas, but I mean, if we're banning aim point, I think we should ban long putters as well. And I don't know. I guess no one has said it, right? But let's just look. Aim point does take longer if you're not doing it properly, right? If you're not doing it when other players are reading their putts. I think there's a respect issue. I think some players might get a little bit too close to the hole, and I get that. When you get too close to the hole when someone else is putting, I don't want my line and my putt to go over someone else's foot and their marks. But I mean, are you going to tell other players not to walk around the hole when we're picking up putts? So from my perspective, aim point has 1,000% helped me. I listen to the announcers sometimes during play, and they say, why would you aim point this, this, and that? It gets a basis of how I read a putt and where I start my lines. It's just like reading something from behind the hole or behind the ball. That's how I'm getting my general read for that. So I don't think people understand how aim point works to really say this is right or wrong. Does it slow down play? I think there are some players that maybe do it in the wrong spots, and sometimes, look, I'll admit it, yeah, maybe I can't get in when I want to, so it adds a couple more seconds, but I know that, and I'm aware of that. I think players need to be aware if they're slow or not, right? Like, let people know who is slow and do something about it, right?
Alex?
Collin, we heard about this fan forward thing, how the fans are really gung-ho about slow play. Is this really a folly, this whole idea that you're going to appreciably change slow play on this tour?
I mean, with the aspect of the fans, I mean, I realize they're complaining about slow play, but if you showed them more shots, I don't think they would complain about slow play, right? Like, how would they know if it's slow play or not if they're seeing more shots in general in the window of the coverage? But it is an issue on the tour. By no means is it something that should be looked over. It should be solved. I mean, obviously, you see what the LPGA is doing. You need to start finding people. Look, if I got slapped on the wrist and got a fine, like, absolutely would I not want to be fined again? It's just like the NBA, like the technicals, right? Some guys are okay with getting fined every week for tees, and if guys are okay getting technicals and getting penalties out here on tour because they're slow, then so be it. But, like, something needs to happen to say, like, and no one wants to be that guinea pig and that first guy to do it and to get it, but it has to start somewhere.
Would it hurt you more if it was money or FedEx Cup points?
It would all hurt. I don't want to lose any of it. But, I mean, whatever the amount is, like, I don't think any of the guys want to be losing it. And FedEx Cup points, I don't think you want to be losing that either.
And lastly, just appreciably, how much do you think you could really cut off out here in regards to time?
It's a very loaded question. Golf course, weather dependent. I mean, it's not like we don't play fast at some golf courses, right? We're not playing in 5.5 hours every week. But a golf course like this where, honestly, there's going to be a lot of looks, like a lot of searches for balls in the rough because the balls sit all the way down. It's going to be wet. It's going to take longer. Sometimes the way golf courses are set up, there's backups early on because there's a par 5 on hole 10, 11, 12, or 1, 2, or 3. Just the way courses are designed, and that's not a knock on anything. It's just how we're playing. We go for par 5s a lot. There's going to be weights. So, like I said, it's not a horrible issue. It's more of a how do we just pick things up and not allow slow players to get away with being slow and interrupting the pace of everything else, of everyone else playing around the tournament, right? It's an unfair advantage, essentially, to say I'm going to just do what I want and just say, hey, pick it up. It's not fair for everyone else to try and go faster.
Collin, do you watch much golf when you're not playing? And if you do, and what do you see as a guy who plays this for a living as you're watching the broadcast? Do you just see shots? Do you see what kind of product is it?
I have it on the background sometimes. I can't say I like sit down and just watch coverage. So it's more just like background if I'm doing stuff at home or whatever it may be. What do I see?
What are you looking for?
I see a lot of commercials, which that's fine. But I also just see a lot of dead zone of golf. And I realize that, like, that's how golf is, right? There's a process that we all go through. Like, nothing's exciting because it doesn't happen until after the ball's hit, right? But I'm sure there can be ways to be lined up to where you see a lot more shots. And, I think the caddy conversations are really interesting, but if you showed one whole segment of a caddy conversation and then you showed a bunch of consecutive shots after that, you'd be like, oh, there we go. We're picking up the pace of things, right? So just how we all want to pick up the pace of slow play. You know, maybe it's a change of cadence on the broadcast of this shot. You know, I'm sure everything's on a slight delay. I think that's how everything works in the world. Like, just picking things up in a way to be able to see a few more shots here and there, I think would be great.
That's what I was getting at. Does it look slow to you?
Golf slow you can't compare golf to any other sport. It's never going to be as fast as anything else, right? Even when you compare it to TGL, like I've watched some of the TGL stuff, even though we have a 40-second shot clock, even though we're moving a lot faster, if you watch it, it's still slower than everything else because that's just how it works, right? That's just how golf is. We're walking, we're methodical. We go through our process to hit these shots. And the excitement of golf happens after the fact of the shot, not the buildup of someone driving, you know, spinning around and then dunking on someone else. Like it's the excitement is always after, and we never know what that is. There's always an unknown, but that, you know, that's just part of golf.
Over here to Adam.
Collin, there also mentioned the idea of some transparency in terms of who are the slow players. Do you think the public should know that, and what effect do you think it would have if it was disclosed who the slow players really are?
I'm all for it. I think it would be great. And shoot, even if we did only get it in the tour, someone's bound to find it, right? Things leak. How would it affect the tour? I mean, some guys I'm sure would hear it out on the golf course, but make our game more exciting. You know, watching last week, I was like, man, like, honestly, like, I kind of wish I was playing because you get that excitement. You know, TGL, you get that excitement sometimes, and sometimes you only get that excitement when you're playing really, really well in a final round, in a final group, on the weekend. But if that builds more interest from people to come out and watch us, and they think you're slow, and then you go out and you're actually not, and they become a fan because you were slow, sure, I think it's all good things. It's not going to be that bad if you let a list out. I don't think so.
What's your beef with the long putter?
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing shade back at, you know, my aim point guys. I'm protecting my aim point guys, right? And there's guys that long putt and aim point. No, I don't have any beef. I don't have anything wrong with putting. I mean, I just had to I had to protect my aim point guys.
It doesn't do anything with pace of play, though.
What, the long putter? No. But, I mean, you know, there's some type of anchoring with, like, it's different.
Right up here to Bob.
I was going to ask that similar question about transparency. That there is a fine structure, right, as guys continue to get more bad times or whatever, and it can get up there. I mean, if they would just publish that, wouldn't the sort of the, you know, there'd be sort of be this negativity associated with it that maybe it would spur the guys on just from that standpoint. And have you ever heard any pushback from your peers into wanting to make that kind of stuff public?
No, I've never really talked to anyone about it. And whether it's public or not, I think we're focusing on the wrong thing is more just you got to do something about it, right? And I don't think enough people are getting fined or enough people are getting penalized. I mean, yeah, I get my warnings, you know, when you're with a group or you're slow and you're behind. But like I said, there's a cadence to golf where I've had many times where I've been warned and then in a hole and a half we're on them. Not because we rushed, but because of the cadence of golf. Our group might be making a lot of pars and bogeys. The group ahead might be making birdies. We go make 2 birdies and we're caught up on a par 5, right? So it's not about that. It's not about is the group slow. And that's the whole problem right now is like, yeah, we time individuals. It should only be individuals because that's where the whole issue is. You add up the amount of shots we're playing over a four-day weekend or 4-day week, and yeah, you might be on the cusp of just over, but you add all those times together, it's a lot of time, right? So how do we narrow that down, and how do you start creating a benchmark of saying, okay, you're going over too many times, one's too many, like let's just hand it to them, versus I don't know what the structure of fines are for slow play.
Right at the back. Take just a few more.
Colin, we'd all like it to be sunny and beautiful out here, but the weather this week, colder, potential rain, how does that affect the beast that is Torrey Pines South and your ability maybe to score a little bit lower?
I mean, it just normally when Torrey is sunny, like let's look back at a few years ago when we had the U.S. Open out here. Fairways were firm, rolling out. Rough is just as long as Torrey Pines, just say. But now you're not getting any rollout in the fairways, so it's going to play a lot longer. Greens might play a little bit softer, but winds are going to be up. So you're going to be hitting more 6, 5, 4 irons into par 3s, into par 4s. You're not going to get the rollout that you would into fairways. It's just going to play a lot longer, and long normally makes it harder. And then you add the factor of the weather, wind, rain. Scores generally aren't low in those conditions.
Right here, Doug.
CNN ask you a lot of slow play questions?
No. He was reminding me of my wins.
When we're on about the second or third year of these elevated events, and I don't know how many non-signature events you played last year, probably 3 or 4? Colonial, Torrey,
Sure.
Zozo,
Yeah,
things
Colonial,
like that.
Torrey, Zurich, Zozo.
About 5?
Yeah.
When you're kind of around the same like large group of players in majors and SIG events and playoffs, do you have a sense that you have a good pulse on the entirety of the players, of the membership, compared with your early days? Not that you're an old man.
Yeah, well, I think a lot more people have, and there's nothing wrong with it, but a lot more people have opinions now than they did when I, let's call it 5 years ago when I played more WGCs and you see the same guys over, right? And you play the majors. It's like at that point, even when I played like when I won my first major at PGA, right? It's like I had seen every single person there many, many times. So and I'm not one that goes out and asks people their opinions, and I just kind of sit back and listen and see how things are flowing with the tour. But yeah, I think a lot more people have opinions, and there's nothing wrong with that, and they're sharing that. But I don't know if we're all focused on, like, how do we make the product better for people, right? I think we've made golf really, really good for ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think every one of us feels like we deserve that, and I think we do. But how do we keep growing, getting more engagement, getting more eyeballs to the sport? How do we have people want to come out to the golf course and say, I want to go watch these 20 players play? I think we're sometimes focusing on small issues that are important, but then we make it like it's going to solve the whole thing. My best example is, I know a lot of people have complained about both sides of like the 125 getting down, cut to 100, right? And they say it's going to make it better for slow play and better for fans or whatever, right? It makes it better for the membership because now those 100 guys that keep their card can say, I can set my schedule in January 1st, and this is what I'm going to play. Even, guys that are 125 right now, they're still like, maybe I get into this, maybe I get into that. Aside from the big signature events, aside from the majors, I'm saying full field events. So it's just focusing on the right things of thinking about the product. How does it come off on TV? How do people watch it at home? Where do they watch it? Why do they watch it? Why do people want to come out? People want to go out to Phoenix because it's a party. There's nothing wrong with that. Each tournament has their own thing, right? Each tournament has their own kind of, what do I call it? Just it has its own essence and the way it shows out. So it's tough to get that when you have 40-something events, but there needs to be a focus on that versus the minute stuff that could affect, smaller, lesser group of people. No, I've not. I feel like, Jay's been great to me. I feel like I can get a lot more done in 20 minutes if I really have an opinion and I really want to share with him or share with someone else that's on the tour. my attention span for 3 hours is not there to sit in those meetings, and I praise those guys that they do, and they do a great job, those guys on the pack, those guys on the board. Not my thing.
How'd you do in those 2-hour classes at Berkeley?
A lot of doodles on my on my computer. A lot of visualizing what shots I'm going to hit at our next college tournament by still retaining the information.
Go right here.
Hey, Colin, following up on the weather, your last start, obviously at Pebble, impacted by the weather. What takeaways do you have from that start, and you can apply to this week, knowing we've got some trouble looming?
Yeah, I think it rained on Saturday, and I actually played with Rory that day, and he played amazing golf. And it was for a stretch of about 4.5 holes. It was some of the toughest golf that I had played. That compared to even last year's Open for a good stretch of holes. Just so difficult. I mean, I hit 3-wood into hole 10. Rory hit 4-iron into hole 10 last week, or a week ago in Pebble. And normally hit pitching wedge or 9-iron. So it shows you how difficult that is for how good Rory and how far he hits it. But there's little things that I felt like I just lost a little bit of control with the irons that I kind of worked on last week. It's hard to work on something and actually reinforce that when the weather's not raining. But there's little things that you can learn from that and take it out here to hopefully have a little bit more control. You never know until it happens, but there's changes that had to be made, and hopefully, they'll show up.
Could you give an example of one of those little things?
Well, I mean, just like control. Like I felt like I started losing balls out to the right. I felt like the body wasn't working as well. So it's just making sure I have the feels in my swing when it's that cold and that windy to know where the ball's going.
And then just one more from me. What do you have to do this week to end up on that stage Sunday night with the trophy?
Yeah, I love this question. Everything. You have to do everything well. Like you can ask that to anyone. They might say, I need to do this, I need to do that. You got to do everything well. Like I think if I look back at all my wins, maybe some things aren't firing perfect, but I mean, one, you got to hit your irons really, really well if you're going to want to contend.
2 more. Got Alex right behind you. Yep. And then we'll end back there.
How much does it affect you when you play with players in your group that are slow?
Yeah, I think I was more worried about that when I first turned pro. I could care less now. Like I know that if our group does get on a warning, like I'm a person that likes to just kind of follow the rules and be with it. So when we get warned, I like to rush myself and get farther up there. But at the end of the day, I know that when the clock is on me and just say a rules official has a timer, like I'm not the reason why. Yes, it might be an accumulation of we had a lot of bad shots, hazards, whatever. It doesn't affect me. It's just, it sucks because there's players out there that are slow that maybe, one, they don't know they're slow, or they do and they just don't care about the respect of others out there. And that's an issue. But you can't force that on someone to say, like, hey, like, pick it up. You can fine them or penalize them or, do something about it, but I can't change someone because they care or they don't care. That's not our position.
Last question in back.
I know you talked about the fires earlier, but you always come across being so proud for being from La Cañada, and it's so close to where the Eden fire was. I was there a couple of weeks ago at the firefighter base camp. What has struck you the most about the resilience of those communities there as they look to rebuild?
Yeah, I think how diverse LA is and how big it is, you never really think of LA as a full one community, but I think that's what you've seen out of this, right? And that's what amazes me, and that's what makes me proud to be, an Angelino. You see that, and you're like, wow, like that's true community right there. You see that a lot in, small cities, smaller places around the country that always band together, and you're really proud to be from there. And I get it. LA has changed a lot since I grew up, and it'll always keep changing, right? But when things like that, when things like the fires happen, community comes together, people want to help out, and that's what you want to see. So it's good to be from there. I'm very, very proud of it, and I'll always try and represent LA as best as I can.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Colin. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Multitasking.